Hello everybody, my name is Murray and I'm a landscape painter from London in the UK. I specialise in sunsets and seascapes, and you can find me on M Stewart Paintings here on YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. And today Felix has been really lovely and let me be a guest teacher on his channel, and we're going to teach and paint with Felix's paints this gorgeous sunset seascape.
So for the tutorial, we're going to use the ColorByFeliks paints. We're going to use the following colours: titanium white, lemon yellow, medium yellow, orange, vermilion, scarlet red, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, violet purple, raw umber, light grey and lamp black. Now I've stained my canvas a raw sienna colour, which I've just used from the pack of paints. You don't have to, I just always colour my canvas just so I've got a darker colour underneath. And all I've done, I've measured about 1/3 of sky and 2/3 as the ocean and the beach. We're going to have a sunset in the middle, which we're going to push back. And all I've done, I've used cobalt blue just to create an outline of an ocean and some waves. And we're going to have the beach here on the right hand side. So if you'd like to pause the video and copy down the outline, feel free to do so, and we will begin. Now we always start with a painting with the background, so we're going to paint the sunset and then we're going to bring the ocean and the water and the beach towards us. So all we're going to do is get a big blob of titanium white and we're just going to create a circle, and that's going to be our focus point for our setting sun. We're going to mix some titanium white and some lemon yellow, which is a really vibrant yellow. We're going to add a little bit of medium yellow, which is like a cad yellow. And we're going to mix the two together, and we're just going to create a glow, like a little circle around our sun. Now you don't have to paint on a brown background like me, I just do that so when I apply light colours like these yellows, I can see where I need to thicken up the paint and where I need to rework areas. So it's an old habit, you don't have to do it, I just find it's easier for good old me, but if you want to paint on a white canvas you can do. So all I've done, I've come out either side of my little circle, and I'm just going to add a little bit more medium yellow. So I'm just going to make it a little bit brighter, and a tiny bit of orange, so just a tiny bit, and a dot of brown. I've just got a dot of brown, which is just off camera, and I've just added to the yellow and a dot of orange, and I'm going to add some titanium white just to make it a little bit darker. Let's add a little bit more orange for some heat if I move my palette up. And we're just going to try to create a sort of golden yellow by adding a little bit of heat into it with some orange. So there we go. So we've got this nice bright golden yellow, it's quite powerful. And what we're trying to do, if you think of the sun as a light source, we're trying to have a really, really nice bright white as the actual sun itself, and then a glow with the light lemon yellow and white, and then this medium yellow with a hint of orange and a dot of brown and some white just around it to create that lovely glow. As I say, don't worry, we're just blocking in. If you make a mistake or it's a bit scruffy, that's quite normal. We just want to create the colours first, and then we'll work on the detail after that. So we're just going to get a little bit more orange to make it darker, and then we're just going to add some of that medium yellow together. Add some white to make it nice and pastel. So we've got this lovely pastel colour, like a peach. And all we're going to do is just go around that yellow and slightly blend it. Don't worry about blending just yet. We just want to sort of put down the base colours. But if you think of a flame or a light source, around the light is really, really extremely bright, so that's our sun. And as you get further away from it, the colours get a little bit cooler. So we're using white as the sun, and then we're using yellow around it, and then we're getting slightly darker and cooler by using that orange, just so it looks like the sun is setting and fading off into the distance. So while I've got that colour, I'm just going right down to the horizon. I'm just blocking her in. I think I'm going to swap to a bigger brush just so it's easier just to lay more paint on. So all I'm doing, I'm just going right down to the horizon and just blocking in that left hand corner. It's much easier with a bigger brush. So there we go. So we're just going to come up to about a third of the sky, just with that colour. So when you are happy with the orange in your sky, we're going to move on to the next colour. So as I say, when we get further away from the light source, we get a little bit cooler and a little bit darker. So we're going to use this colour, which is an orangey red called Vermilion. And we're going to add a tiny bit of Cobalt Blue to make it more purple. And lots of white to make it more pastel. So tiny little bit of Cobalt Blue. So we're mixing a little bit of Vermilion and a little bit of Cobalt Blue with lots of white. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to create a sort of a nice sort of lavender colour, a light grey purple. Because if you go from orange or yellow to blue, you get unfortunately green. So we're going to try to create a sort of buffer zone by using little bits of this sort of vermilion, which is like an orangey red, and a little bit of the combination of a cool blue to create this buffer zone between the warm aspects of a sunset and the cool blues we're going to put at the top of the painting. So we're going to use this sort of colour as a buffer zone so we don't get green. Because you never see a green sky, do you? Unless you're looking at the northern lights or something. So I'm just going to add a little bit more white to the mix just to make it a little bit lighter. Acrylics always dry darker than you think, so it's always best to go a little bit lighter than you think. And then you can always darken it up if you have to. So there we go. So we're just coming down into that orange. Just gently sort of mixing it together. I'm not really working on the blending just yet. I just want to sort of put the base colours on first. So we've got this nice cooler colour as the sky gets a little bit cooler. And then we're going to go into our blue. So I've got a clean brush. And I've got some Cerulean Blue, which is a bit more of a turquoisey blue. And I'm going to add lots of white to that mix. So Cerulean Blue and lots of white to make it nice and pastel. Now the great thing about Feliks' paints, they're really vibrant. So you don't need much of each paint. So they're actually really good because they last a long time. And they have these super bright colours. So what we're going to do, we're going to go right to the top corners and we're going to use this lovely bright blue to frame our composition, our painting. Now, I don't know if you guys ever watched Bob Ross, but one of his techniques was to always darken your corners. And it's a little cheat in painting. And by darkening your corners, it gets you to focus down the middle of your painting. So it's a good little habit. So by using a darker colour like this blue, it not only frames the painting, but it gets the person to look straight down the middle. So what we're going to do, we're just going to leave a little gap here where we're going to add lots more white to our mix. And we're just going to make it a little bit lighter. And just as it touches that sort of purpley red colour, we're just going to create some X shapes with our brush. And we're just going to make the lighter blue at the bottom going up. And have that darker blue in the corners to frame the painting. So as I say, don't worry about the jumping colours. We'll work on our blending in a little bit. We just want to lay down the foundation of what colours go where. So there we go. I'm just blending it, going upwards. So we've got the nice colour at the top and the lighter blue at the bottom. As I say, it's much easier if you use a soft, bigger brush because then you can cover more distance. So we've got this lovely glow, we've got the cooling sky, and then we've got the nice dark blue. So where we've got these free jumps, as I say, we'll work on our blending in a minute. We just want to sort of block in areas. So we've got the ocean and we've got this sand here. So why don't we block in that now? So let's get our palette. And we're going to use this light warm grey, which is a fantastic light grey. And then we're going to add some raw umber brown to that mix to make it nice and cool. So light grey and raw umber brown. And we're going to add a tiny bit of violet, which is a nice colour purple. So just to warm it up, a tiny bit of violet. We should have this nice cool grey that's quite warm. So up here by the sun, it's going to be getting a lot more sunlight. So we'll lighten it up in a minute. But what we first want to do is just block in our area of sand, just so we know where everything is in the painting. So I'm just using a smaller brush as I go around the ocean, just because it makes it easier to not be so scruffy. I can go right into my outline just because I've got a nicer, smaller brush, so I don't make a mistake. And then as we come down and it gets a bit thicker, I'm going to swap back to my big brush. I've cleaned it so it's nice and clean, and then I can cover more surface with a bigger brush, a bit easier. There we go. So all we want to do, we just want to block it in. So with acrylic paints, look, if I don't use much paint and I use too much water, can you see it's very streaky? So that's why I always paint my canvas the darker colour, because I can see where I need to thicken up the paint. So I'm just making a little bit more of that paint. So it was light grey, raw umber brown, and a tiny bit of purple. So I'm just thickening up the paint. Let's put a little bit more grey into the mix just to make it cooler. There we go. And then I can match the colour, and by having a nice dark colour underneath, I can see where I've missed areas of the canvas, and I can see where there was a bit too much water on my brush, and I can thicken up the paint, you see. So I just find it makes it easier for me. So there we go, really easy peasy. We've got this sky in the background. Now we've got our sand all blocked in. So around the sun it's going to be a lot brighter, but the bottom corner, remember what I was just saying about how we want to darken our corners to get you to look towards our sunset? Well, that's going to not be getting much light. So the bottom right hand corner is going to be getting hardly any sun because it's really far away from the sun, whereas nearer the sun it's going to be a lot more in the heat. So this bottom corner, we're just going to add a tiny bit of lamp black to the mix. So we're just going to add some black. Now you don't need much because black is really overpowering. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to come in from the corner and just gently blend that into that previous nice sand colour. So I'm just coming in with my brush from the corner, and again just at the bottom of the painting, just to frame her. So just like we did with the blue, I just want a darker colour at the bottom. And then I'm going to clean my brush, so make sure you clean it because black is very dark and overwhelming. So get a clean brush, and then we're just going to get some orange. We're going to take most of the paint off. I'm just using my scruffy painting clothes. And all we're going to do is just heaten up this area, because this area will be getting lots of sunlight. So this area of the sand will be nice and hot. So we're just heating up this area with some warm orange. And we're just coming down and we're just blending it, coming from the edge. So it just looks like it's fading away. So an easy cheat. So we've got this lovely blended sky and we've got this lovely blended sand. So we're just going to work quickly on our ocean, and then we'll start putting all the details over the top, and I'll teach you how to blend and how to paint clouds and waves and everything. So if you imagine the sunlight is going to be reflecting down onto this lovely beautiful ocean, we're going to use the same colours so it looks like a mirror. So all we're going to do, I'm just going to mix the colours back up because my paint has dried. So we're just going to use some white, yellow and orange. So it was the medium yellow, lots and lots of white and a little bit of orange to make that lovely gold colour. So we just want to try to match the sky with the colours on the ocean. So think of a mirror reflecting down. We just want to kind of match the colours. Now if you find acrylics dry quick, you can always use a little spray bottle for plants. You know what you would, like a mist bottle? They're really good. if you find your acrylics dry quickly. So all we're going to do, we're going to come down here and just sort of blend that area just so the colours all match. So I'm just going over the top where I've missed areas. And then as we go further again from the light source, we're going to get cooler. So we're going to mix the medium colour, which was our buffer colour, which was lots and lots of white and a little bit of the vermilion and a little bit of cobalt blue, but loads and loads of white to make it really, really pastel, to create this sort of warm, cool purple. So like an in-between colour. I think mine's come out really too light. I think I put way too much white in there. So as I say, if you find sometimes that your colours dry, I know a lot of time with acrylics, when using acrylics, sometimes your colours dry and then it's hard to rematch them. Don't worry, the great thing about acrylics is they're perfect for beginners. You can always change your work, you can always paint over it. You know, if you use a hairdryer, you can always dry it very quickly and then rework areas. So all I'm doing, I'm just adding a little bit more paint, a little bit more colour. We won't put as much white in this time. There we go, that's a bit better. Looks prettier. So we've got that colour. Oops, I think I've got a dirty brush. So as I say, look, you can just clean it. Look, you just clean it with a bit of kitchen roll or anything like that. They're so forgiving. Acrylics are perfect for people learning because unlike oils, we have to wait for them to dry. You can literally just wipe them away, look, and paint over them. So there we go, no bother, easy peasy, perfect for beginners. So all I'm doing, I'm just using a bigger brush and I'm just making X shapes with my brush and I'm just gently blending it into the previous colour. So I'm just rocking my brush back and forth, creating an X shape. And then we're just going to mix some of that cerulean blue and white. So lots of white and a little bit of cerulean blue. So loads of white and some cerulean blue. And we're just going to put the dark, cooler colour away from the sunlight in this corner. So again, we're darkening up our corners. And as I say, I think it's a little bit too light. I think I'm going a bit gung-ho with the white today. I think it should be a bit more paint, a bit more vibrancy. So I'm just going to add a little bit more cerulean blue just to make it a shade darker. There we go, that looks pretty. So what we're trying to do, just like the sky, look, we're trying to, if this corner's furthest away, just like the black, this corner's going to be getting less sunlight and it's going to be cooler. But by using the same colours in the sky as we are on the ocean, we're tricking the eye and we're making it all match. So it looks all realistic. So as I say, all we're going to do is just block in this bottom corner, make it nice and cool. And then we're going to create our X shapes and just gently blend it into the previous colours. Feliks is the master of blending and it obviously does his own blender brushes and everything like that. So if you want to study blending, watch lots of Feliks' tutorials and you'll see how amazingly he does it. So we've got this warm colour, a medium colour and a cool colour. So we've got this all blocked in, we've got this lovely glow. We've got all our colours matching and we've got our sand. Everything's ready to go. So now we're going to neaten everything up and make it all look pretty and super realistic. And we're going to start blending everything so there's not so much jumping colours everywhere. So I'm just going to get some titanium white and put in my sun. And then we're going to create the glow around the sun. So we're going to get some titanium white, some lemon yellow and a little bit of the medium yellow, to create a sort of Naples yellow. And we're just going to create a little circle going around our sun. And then by just darkening it up with a little bit of the medium yellow, so we're just making it a bit more yellowy, we're just trying to work on these transitions. So where you've got to jump from one shade of colour, so from the light yellow to the bright yellow, we just want to work on the transition and just make the blending just look a bit softer. So all we're doing, we're just taking our time. The canvas is dry, and we're just going to work on trying to create not noticeable jumps in colour. So if we just mix some of the lighter glow colour, and we just add a tiny bit of yellow, we can just soften up this area, just so it looks much more natural. So there we go. And then we're just going to add a little bit more yellow, just going around it, just to create that lovely sort of glow in the sunset. Trying to make it look really pretty in pastel still, but we want this vibrancy of the yellow. So we're just going round the outside, just gently blending her. And then as the sun sets and you get further away from the sun, we're going to get slightly cooler and a bit darker. So we're going to start adding some orange. So we've got the white for the sun, we've got the yellow for the glow. And now we're going to get some orange. We're going to add that to our medium yellow. So we're just going to mix the two to create sort of a goldeny yellowy orange. We're still going to add a little bit of white just to keep it pastel. And we should create this gorgeous sort of peach colour. So again, from yellow to orange is kind of a big jump. So by using this peach colour, we can create sort of an in-between that naturally blends into the yellow. So again, look, we're just blending her really, really gently. Just trying to make those transitions super smooth. Because if you look at nature and you look at, say, an ocean or a sunset or a sky, you don't notice the change in colour. The blending is almost as perfect can be. So us as artists, we want to we'll never get anywhere near it, but we want to try to aspire to it. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just blending that orange into the yellow, just so you don't notice the change in colour. And you can do this technique where you just make like little X shapes with your brush, and you just ease up on the pressure so you don't push down too hard on the canvas, and that will just blend the colours. So there we go. Super easy once you know how. And then we're just going to get even darker. So we're just going to add a little bit more orange to our pastel peach colour. So the air is cooling and the colour is getting darker, but it's still very, very warm because obviously it's near the sun. And all we're going to do is just blend that area now. So by just going back and forth with 2 shades of colour, you can just merge areas. Just make them look much more softer. Create this glow effect. So if you think of a flame or a candle, you get this lovely glow around the heat source. And we're just gradually just merging that into the ocean water below. So if we've done it on the bottom, we're going to do it at the top. And we're just going to blend this top area, create that glow. So there we go. And then we're going to add the sort of warm colour of the sky, our buffer colour, do you remember? Which was the Vermilion, a little bit of Cobalt Blue. We're going to add a tiny bit of orange just to make it a little bit warmer, and some white. So we're just trying to create a nice pastel colour. It's just a shade darker. It's got some of that Cobalt Blue, some of the sort of cool shadow colours to offset it. So we'll try that out. We'll see how that goes. There we go. That's perfect. So again, we're trying to make not a big jump in colour. There's a bit of a jump where the orange and the yellow meet. So we'll neaten that up. So let's put a tiny bit more orange and a tiny bit more white just to make it more pastel. A little bit of yellow. We'll just mix the 2 areas together. And just here, look, where there's a big jump, all I'm doing, look, I'm just trying to find a colour that's in between the 2. And I'm just trying to merge it. So take your time. As I say, a lot of painting is just recognising where you've made mistakes and just reworking areas. And the great thing, as I say, with acrylics, And especially Feliks' paints, they're awesome. So you can always look, just go over the top and just blend them. They're super vibrant, so they look really nice and realistic. Perfect for sunsets. And they're really easy to blend. So as I say, just take your time, work on these transitions. Because when we put the clouds over the top, and the same when we do the ocean and we put the waves over the top, that's what creates the realism. It's all this blending underneath. So just at the horizon, I'm just making it a little bit lighter. I'm just using some of that orange and yellow and white, because the horizon is always a little bit shade lighter at the base where it meets the ocean, and then it just gradually gets darker as we move up. So we've got obviously a big jump here, but our orange and yellow area is perfect. So now we're going to work on our mix, that sort of pinky, sort of purpley colour, and our cool blue, and we're going to merge that all together. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to blend around here. Just trying to make this a lot softer. So I'm just doing my X shapes again. I'm just using that colour that's got a little bit of the vermilion and the cobalt blue and white in it. But it's still got plenty of orange to add that warmth of the sun. So if you think of hot colours as things like yellows, oranges, pinks, and you think of cool colours like shadows, sort of blues and purples, all we're doing is trying to combine the two. So we're going to get some cerulean blue and some white and create that really nice pastel horizon colour. And then we're just going to add a tiny bit of the vermilion just to make it more grey. So we've got an in-between, and we'll try that out. We'll see how that goes. So all I'm doing, I'm just wiping away most of the paint. And just here where the two colours meet, we've got a bit of both. We've got a bit of warmth in the vermilion, but we've got a bit of coolness, a bit of shadow in the cerulean blue. And because we've got plenty of white, it's still very pastel. So we're just making it lighter at the bottom. So there we go. And then where there's a big jump between the blue and this lovely sort of reddy colour, we're just going to add some white and vermilion and a little bit of the cerulean blue. God, that's a mouthful. So white, vermilion and cerulean blue. And we're going to add plenty of white to make it nice and pastel. And then we're just going to create our X shapes, and we're just going to blend this area together. So we don't have such a horrible jump from the warmth of the sunset and the coolness of the blue sky. So think of the three little bears. One's too hot and one's too cold, and you want something in between. So think of yin and yang. If you have something too dark, it's almost black, and if you have something too bright, it's almost blinding. So if you have something in the middle, by using some red that's warm, or the vermilion, excuse me, and some cerulean blue, which is cool, and adding white in between, we've got this thing in between, and that bridges the two areas of the sunset together. And because we've blended it, it looks really realistic. So look at that. And you don't get a green sky, yay! Because we've got this nice sort of vermilion colour in between, sort of protecting us from mixing the yellows and oranges with the blues. So when you're happy with it, you've got this beautiful blended sky, and it looks all really natural. There's no jumps in colour, and we've got the darker colour at the edges to nice and frame it. So now we've got that, we can actually start putting some clouds on. So that's the hardest bit. Blending and trying to work on your transitions is the hardest bit. So now when we're doing the clouds and things, it starts getting much easier. So we're going to mix some orange and some white to make a pastel orange. So orange and titanium white, please. And all we're going to do, we're going to start making some clouds. So I've taken off most of the paint off my brush. I've just got a smallish brush. And I'm just going to start making the shapes of some clouds. So all I do, I just kind of make flat clouds towards the horizon. So at the bottom of a sky, the clouds tend to go across the canvas. So they look pretty flat We'll give them some bobbles just to make them look nice and marshmallowy and puffy. But they tend to go straight across in the sky. And then as they go up, because the world is obviously a dome, a circle, they kind of go a bit diagonally. And they go around the dome. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go out sort of diagonally. So I'm going to make them look like they're going around. And because we've got that beautiful blended sky now we're putting the clouds on top. It's going to trick the eyes and make it look really realistic. So all I'm doing, I'm just pushing that colour over the top. You can dry your painting. So if you make a mistake, you can just wipe away these clouds and your lovely blended sky will still be underneath. So if you ever get nervous, just dry your painting with a hairdryer before you attempt to put things over the top. And then if you do make a mistake, you can just use a baby wipe or a wet cloth and just take them off. But as I say, the great thing about acrylics, if we do make a mistake, we can always paint over it. It's no bother. So I'm just making these ones a little bit more diagonal. But the reason we're using orange is because it's still very warm. It's a sunset. It's getting plenty of heat, these clouds. So as I say, we're going quite flat at the base, near the horizon, and quite more diagonal as we move up into the painting. So there we go. And then we're just going to get around the sun. It's still going to be incredibly warm, isn't it? So we're just going to match that in the clouds. So we're going to add yellow, medium yellow, and some orange together. A little bit of white just to make it still pastel. We want everything nice and pastel in this painting. And then all we're going to do, we're just going to wipe away 90% of the paint. We're just going to glaze it. We're almost going to colour it in. So around the sun's going to be incredibly warm. So these tips of these clouds, we're just going to warm them up by using the yellow. So all I'm doing, I'm just glazing over the top, just colouring them in. So think of a colouring in book, like a crayon. We're just going over the top of the paint we just did. And it just looks nice and warm. So if you think of a light source, all around that sun is getting warmed up. So you just got to think where the light would be touching these clouds and just warm it up. So these ones in the middle will be nice and warm. There we go. And what it does as well, it just pushes them back into the far distance and makes them less harsh. So let's have some little orangey clouds here. And the tips of these ones, these would be getting bleached in the sunlight. So let's warm them up. There we go. Same on this one. So look, I'm just colouring them in. Super easy. Let's have one over here. Just getting that sunlight. So take your time, relax. So there we go. And then let's get some white and a little bit of orange and a little bit of the vermilion. And then let's just have a few in the sun that sort of sparkling a little bit, getting a little bit of that light. So around the middle of the sun it's going to be a bit bleached with the power of the bright sun. So I'm just putting a lighter shade here in the middle. And then let's have a few little stragglers. Just colour some of these bits in just to make them look a bit more bleached in the sunlight. Acrylics always dry a little bit darker, so if you find your clouds look really harsh or anything, don't worry, just dry your work with a hairdryer or just leave them for 10 minutes and let it air dry. And then as I say, you can go over the top with lightish colours and a nice soft brush and you can just glaze them. Look, you can just colour them in and make them less harsh. So it's an old trick. So let's get some orange, some vermilion, and a little bit of purple. So we're going to use some hot and some cold, and we're going to put them together. And we're going to put a tiny bit of the light grey in, just to make it nice and dark, to create sort of a crimsony colour. But we're still going to add some white to make it pastel. And then we're just going to add a little bit of cobalt blue again to cool it down. So if you think all the warm colours are on the left, all the cool colours are on the right, by combining the two, we can create an in-between colour. So just on all the little tips or the edges of these clouds, we've got this sort of nice sort of pastel-y crimson colour. We're just going to have some harsher clouds that are getting less sunlight. So if you imagine these ones, they're still quite warm. They've still got some orange and vermilion in them, but they've got a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of purple and grey. So these outer clouds are all the ones getting less sunlight, so they're just a bit cooler in colour. But it's the same technique, look, it's the same technique. We're just colouring over the top, just adding some breakaway clouds. They're furthest away from the sunlight, so they're almost silhouetted. But we don't want to use really harsh, cool colours, because harsh colours bring things forward. We want to have this sky nice and pushed back and in the distance. So by doing the same technique, but by using less harsh colours, we can push it back. Make it look so far away and fluffy and pretty. There we go. Just joining up some of the edges, just so it all interlinks. There we go. So if you imagine my hand, one side is going to be in the light and one side is going to be in the shade. So it's the same with the clouds. The sunlight is coming from underneath, and the top area is going to be a bit more in the shade because it's getting less light. There we go, just neaten it all up. And then let's get some orange and yellow. And some white. So make that lovely sort of peachy colour. A tiny bit of the vermilion to it. There we go. So it's got a tiny hint of red to it, so it's still very peachy, but we're just using a tiny bit of that sort of vermilion, that red sort of colour. Again, we're just glazing over the top, and it just links the two areas together. Just so all the transitions look really natural. And then we can just put back our sun with some titanium white. So let's just do that. Let's just create a little circle. Just pure titanium white to make it look all sparkly. There we go. Let's make it a bit bigger. So if any areas of your painting need reworking, just take your time and just go over the top. So all I'm doing, I'm just putting the white in. It wasn't dry, and when I tried to do it, it was a bit messy. So I've just dried it, just reapplied the paint, just created a little circle. And because I've given it 2 coats of paint, it's a lot brighter, it's a lot more vibrant. And I'm just using my finger like a professional, just to create the glow. So we've got this lovely pushback background, we've got a blended sky. So now we're going to work on the ocean. And first we're just going to blend it all again. And then we're going to put all the waves over the top. So just like we did with the clouds, we blend it first, and then we put all the detail over the top. Super easy. So we're going to mix some of that yellow, orange and white. A tiny bit of the vermilion. Just lots of white to make it pastel. So we're just trying to match the colours in the sky with that of the ocean. And all we're going to do, at the top where the ocean meets the water, we're just going to try and blend it so it looks like it's just fading off into the distance. So we're just coming down, And just on the horizon here, I just want it to blend. It just look like it's just fading off. So you don't notice which bit's the ocean and where the water and the sky meet. So just here, we're just blending it again. I just want it all really nice and soft. So we just add some of that glow to the ocean. And then if you have any of your canvas that you've missed, like me here, you can just neaten it up. So again, a lot of painting is just working on your transitions, neatening areas up, having a bit of patience and discipline just to rework areas. So look, down here it's really scruffy, got lots of canvas showing up. So by just taking our time, look, we can just colour it over, just correct anything. Same here, look, it's just all a bit scruffy. And then let's make some of the same colour that's in the sky with the white, orange, tiny bit of vermilion and a bit of cobalt blue. So we combine the hots and the colds again to create that sort of in-between colour. As I say, look, you don't need much paint, so let's just add plenty of white because it's going to dry a bit darker. Let's test that out. There you go. And let's just gradually blend this area. So again, we're just creating our X shapes, just merging the warm colour into this lovely in-between colour. We come down. So just here, I want it to be quite cool, simply for the fact that we're getting further away from the sun as we go along the beach. But I'm just going to get some of this orange first. Don't put your thumb in some paint, whatever you do, like me. But all I'm going to do, I'm just going back to the previous colour. Now we've got that sort of vermilion colour on, I'm just going to go over the top here and just merge it and just make it look a little bit softer. So as I say, just going back and forth between the two colours till you're happy with it is the trick. There we go. So let's go down to about here. And then we'll make the bottom left a lot cooler, because we're more in the shade. So let's get some white and some cerulean blue. Make it nice and pastel. Plenty of white. And then don't put your thumb in red paint, because then you'll have splodges just like me. So let's make this area a little bit cooler by using blues. And by putting a second layer of paint on, it also makes it look so much more vibrant. You see how much more brighter it looks on that patch here in the middle. So by just going over the top, sometimes twice with your paint, it can really make areas look super vibrant. Because the thing with acrylics, because they're water based, they absorb some of the colour underneath. So even if you're painting on a white canvas, sometimes by just putting a second layer of paint on your canvas, it can really make a difference in the colour. So again, look, we're just going back to the previous colour and we're just merging the two, creating those X shapes. So say the same trick over and over again. Let's just make this area a little bit warmer. So hold it steady. Let's just blend that bit there. There we go. Yay! So that's looking really nice and blended. And we've got obviously our sky that's looking really cool. So we're going to dry our work with a hairdryer, because we're going to apply some painting tape. Now I've swapped over here to a flat brush. Now a flat brush is so easy to create straight lines because the brush is nice and flat. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the tip of this brush to create straight lines, and we're going to paint our waves in. And by using some painting tape, we can get a nice straight horizon. So we're going to get some orange, And we're going to get lots of white. And we're going to mix the two areas together. And we're going to add a tiny bit of this light grey, just to make it a little bit darker, but not too dark. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint the horizon. And we're also going to paint far away waves. And the reason we're using orange and light grey is because we want them far off into the distance, but we want to keep them nice and warm. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to go right up to the tape and create a straight line. I will zoom in for you so you can all see it closer in 2 seconds. And all I'm going to do underneath it is go across, look, just go across with the flat edge of the brush, and it's going to create nice sort of far off waves. And because they're kind of this sort of, there we go, if we zoom in, because they're kind of this sort of darkish orangey colour, they look like they're getting plenty of heat, but they're far off into the ocean. So look, we're just going to create little lines with that brush. Super easy. And we're just leaving little gaps in our blended underpainting to shine through. So let's just have a few over this side. So what I'm doing, I'm just going straight across. And then I'm going right up to the tape, just to create a nice horizon line. And then as we come nearer to the beach, we're going to get darker, because again, we're getting further away from the sun. So we're just going to, let's go right up to the tape first. Just make a nice straight horizon. Now that we've got this colour. So there we go. And these brushes, it makes your life so much easier just because the way they're designed. So using tape and using the brush, easy little cheat. And then as I say, we're going to get darker as we come towards the beach and the waves get closer. So we're going to mix raw umber brown and cobalt blue together. So we're going to mix raw umber brown and cobalt blue together to create this nice dark grey. But because it's got some brown in it, it's still quite warm. And then we're going to create another colour, which is raw umber brown, some cobalt blue. But then we're going to put a little bit of orange in it to make it even warmer and hotter. So you can see just by adding orange, it makes it more brighter. And we're going to add a tiny bit of purple just to make it a little bit darker. And then some white, and we should get a light grey. And because it's got orange and a little bit of purple in it, it's still quite warm. So we've got a really dark grey and this medium grey. And then we've got obviously got our warm orange that we use far away. So we're going to use some of this lighter grey here in the middle. So let's say because it's got some orange in it, it's still quite warm. So what it's doing, it's bringing that wave forward. But because it's warm, because it's got the orange and the brown and the purple, it's still pushing it back into the distance. So again, it's the colour tricking your eye. And all we're doing, we're just using that tip of that brush. So let's get plenty on our brush. And we're just going to do the same trick as we did in the distance. Look, we're just going to do our lines going across. So we're just using that sharp edge of the brush. We're leaving gaps in the underpainting. And we're just creating waves. It's so easy. Look, you can even do little scoops. So you could use the very tip of the brush. And you can create little divots, little scoops. Where the wave cascades over. But even if you don't have a steady hand and you get a bit nervous, this brush does all the work. And they're literally like £1 or $1. So they're super cheap and they make your life so much easier. So let's just put some waves in. So let's have some just here in the middle. And let's have some going across. Here we go. Coming right to this edge. And then, because there's a big jump, a bit like our clouds and our sky, what we're going to do, we're going to combine that light grey with some of the previous colour and mix an in between. So think of what I was saying to you, not too cold, not too hot. We have something in between and then bridge this area so there's not so much a jump. So just by having a little bit of that light grey in with the orange and go right up to the horizon, it just looks like this area is getting a little less heat and it just fades out into the distance. So there we go. You can soften it up by just going over it with your finger. And then as we come towards the viewer and towards the beach, we're getting darker and darker. We're getting almost silhouetted. So we're going to get our darkest grey that we made, which was Cobalt Blue and Raw Umber Brown. We don't want to use black because black is really overpowering. So by putting some Cobalt Blue and some Raw Umber Brown together, it almost looks black, but it's just a little bit less harsh. Oops, I think I got too much water on my brush. So let's add a tiny bit of black, just a smidge. Look, we don't want to put too much. Still plenty of Cobalt Blue, still plenty of the Raw Umber Brown, but just a hint of black. And we have less water on our brush. There we go. So it's pretty silhouetted, but it's not as cartoony as just pure black. And all we're doing, we're making this wave a little bit more chunkier, a little bit more wider. So it looks like it's nearer to us. And because it's a harsher colour, it just brings that wave into the shore. So we're going to do the exact same trick. We're going to use the outer edge of the brush. And we're going to start putting in some divots into our lovely blended underpainting. And start building up this wave as it comes into the beach. So I know a lot of people struggle with sunsets and a lot of people struggle with painting water. So hopefully this tutorial is covering both. But as I say, it's the underpainting underneath that is tricking the eye. So now we put these little cheats over the top by using the correct brushes and using the correct colours. That's what's creating the realism. So look, if you use the very tip of the corner, you can create little scoops. And it's really, really easy, as I say, to do straight lines. So now we've got this harsher colour. We're going to leave a bit of an edge because we're going to have lots of seafoam. So you get that lovely sort of frothy edge when the water and the wave comes up into the beach. So we're just going to leave a little outline. But we just want to create our divots, our shadows here in the water. So let's just come up to that outline. Have some here. And then let's have some bigger ones up here. So I'm trying to vary them. I'm trying to have some coming at a little bit different angles, some being a bit thick, some being a little bit thinner, just to create a little bit of realism. Sometimes it just happens with the brush. Sometimes you just push down a little bit harder automatically. And again, just here, I'm just going to have some coming from underneath, just so it looks more 3D. So it's all starting to take shape. So let's have some coming out here. And just link this middle area. There we go. And again, where there's a big jump from this colour to the darker colour, I'm just going to use this darker colour to put in some harsher waves here in the middle. just here, just to link the two areas. There we go. So we're going to remove our painting tape, and dun 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 dun, we should have a perfectly straight horizon. So look at that. If you have any of your paint come off, you can always just paint over it. So if you have sometimes it was just a little bit wet, you can paint over where the tape has just pulled a little bit of your paint off. So now we're going to work on the seafoam that joins up the beach. So I'm just going to swap to a clean brush, and we're going to get some of that cobalt blue, which is nice and cool, and we're going to get plenty of white. So cobalt blue and plenty of white. We're going to make it this nice cool blue, and we're going to add a tiny bit of purple into it just to make it nice and cool, and then just a little bit more white just to make it less harsh. So there we go, more pastel again. So by adding purple and cobalt blue together, we get a nice cool blue, and then by adding white and cerulean blue, we're going to get the same colour as our sky. So we've got this light blue, which is white, lots and lots of white and a little bit of cerulean blue. And then we've got a cooler blue, which is white, cobalt blue and a little dot of purple. So we've got this one that's not so harsh, and then we've got one that's really, really harsh. So we're going to use the lighter shade of blue first, and this is going to be our seafoam. So we're going to create parts of the wave and the seafoam that's getting some sunlight. So by using a lighter, softer blue, we can create this lovely sort of outer rim of the wave, where you get this lovely foamy, bubbly bit. So all we're going to do, we're just going to link this area, create this lovely sort of outer bit. And then come down here. Where that colour is so similar to this area, you're not going to notice it that much here. But as we move up into the warmer colours like here, you'll notice it. So we're just going to try and create this sort of frothy edge. It comes down. Here we go. So again, don't worry if it's scruffy to begin with. We'll neaten it all up in a minute. We just sort of kind of gauge where this area is going to be. So if you think when the water crashes into the beach, it sort of churns up and you get this sort of wash. So we're just trying to use this light blue to create that. So there we go. Let's come down here. And then we're going to use the darker blue here in this bottom corner. So if you think this area is getting hardly any sunlight, and we're also going to use it on the bottom of the wave, and then it looks like this area is in the shade. So by using cool blues and cool purples, you can cool areas and make them look like they're in the shade. And if you want to warm areas and give them highlights, you just use warmer colours, such as orange, yellows and reds and whites and pinks. So by using this cool blue, look, we can make this area, and we can also make the bottom edge look like it's not getting any sunlight. It's nice and cool. We're trying to make the edges nice and soft and rounded. It's a bit like clouds. We don't want them square or harsh. So try and make them nice and rounded. Water's very feminine, very curvy. So we want to make it nice and curvy. So there we go. Just make it a little bit softer. And that cool blue again should trick the eyes and make this corner look nice and in the shade. And then the outer bottom bits as well. There There we go. And then just going to make an even darker blue, so we just add in a little bit more Cobalt Blue and a little bit of that raw Umber, like we did with the wave. So Cobalt Blue and raw Umber to make more of a grey. And then just from about here, we're just going to make it a little bit harsher. So this area is getting really silhouetted. Still don't want to use black. As I say, black is like a killer of colour. And it's really, really harsh. So we want to save our darkest darks to the nearest the viewer. So we're just going to use this sort of grey blue, which is sort of in between. So just on the outer edge. And then we're just going to get some of the lighter blue. And then we're just going to link up some areas. I'm not going to do incredible amount of Seafoam, but I'm just going to link some of the bubbles and some of the Seafoam to that outer edge. So what I'm doing, as I say, it's really subtle. I'm just creating some little splats and little dots to emphasize bubbles. So it's just linking these two areas together. We get sort of Seafoam and wash, and you get these sort of bubbles and splats. So as I say, we won't do many, we'll just do a few. All I'm doing, I'm just going between the waves, and just, as I say, just trying to create them randomly. I don't want them all looking the same. As you come down, you won't notice it too much because this area is nice and cool, but up here, look, you can really notice in it. So let's have one here. Just link this area up. And then the same, just up here where this area links. So I'm just creating some Seafoam. I say not much. All this area will be getting lots of heat, so I don't want to cover it with cool blue because it kind of does away with the effect. So I'm just glazing over the top just gently. And then down here I'm just using some of that cooler blue that we mixed up, which was Cobalt Blue, white and dot of purple. And I'm just doing the exact same trick, little squiggles. But I'm just using that cooler blue. As I say, it's really subtle, it's hardly noticeable. It's just another little trick. There we go. So let's get some black and let's get some Cobalt Blue, mix them together. And a tiny bit of the brown. So black, Cobalt Blue and brown. And then now let's create a really harsh outline. So as I say, black is really, really harsh. So we only want to use it when it's closest to us. So we want to bring this wave really close to the viewer, look like it's going up the beach. And it's right next to our feet. So by using this harsh outline, we can bring this nice big wave towards us. So as I say, if you use black in the background, it'll bring things towards you. So we want to keep it for things that are just next to us. So there we go, just using a thin brush, much easier to outline and put fine detail with a small brush. So there we go, so we've got this nice harsh outline. And then let's just do a little bit on this one, not too much. Just on the outskirts of this one. These are still pretty close to us. And then a little bit just here. You can take a bit of harshness out the black by adding a little bit of Cobalt Blue. So as we go further off into the distance, by adding a tiny bit of Cobalt Blue, it just takes a little bit of the harshness of that black. So there we go. And then down here, I'm just going to use some of the colour and just a little bit of water, and I'm just going to create a sort of cool outline. So just by adding a little bit of water, it again takes the harshness of the colour out. So again, in the bottom corner, I'm going to make it nice and harsh, just here. And as I go up into the sand, and it's going towards the light, I'm just letting that water run out and just making it less harsh. So I'm just going to mix some more of that colour up. And then let's just interlink some of these areas. I think this area here, I'm putting some of this dark colour on. I think it's too harsh. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to make my wave a little bit wider. But I think this area here is just a bit too dark. Sometimes when you're painting, you've got to figure things out. And the only way to do that is by making mistakes and literally trying things out, like having a little bit of experimentation. So all I'm doing, I'm trying to bring this wave forward by darkening her. So can you see, by just coating her in a darker colour, it makes her harsher. But because there's a big jump, I'm going to have to make some darker ones here in the foreground. And I think it just makes it look a little bit too cartoony. But as I say, with acrylics, we can always correct this. So while I've got the colour, why not leave it to dry while we figure it out, and we'll create a little outline here on this edge. And knowing what types of brushes to use and when, I'm just using a really fine line of really tiny brush. Look, it's got a really sharp nib. It's almost like a fine liner pen. So it's so much easier. Look, I can even put little dots and bubbles and little divots in the seafoam here in the foreground. So rather than using a big chunky thick brush, I can put lots of little fine detail on, and it makes my life so much easier. So let's just put some little divots, really tiny, just some little fine detail. Just while we're thinking of what to do with that wave, because as I say, I think it's a bit harsh. Let's put some coolness into it. So let's get some white and some cobalt blue, and let's put some sea wash into it, make it look less harsh. So I've had a tiny bit of black just because my brush was dirty. Got a little bit of white and some cobalt blue, and I'm just going to create a sort of wave effect. So I'm just going to colour in a little bit of the middle. I'm still leaving some of that outer black. I'm just going to create the illusion of some seafoam, so as the wave sort of barrels over. I'm going to leave some of that black in the left hand corner, and just here it looks like the wave is sort of crashing over. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same in this same colour here on this one against this warmer wave. And then when we zoom in, you can see it a little bit clearer, because I appreciate it's a bit far off in the distance here. And then I think just here in the foreground, I'm just going to get some cobalt blue and mix it in with some of that vermilion again, just a tad, to make sort of a warm grey. And rather than add any white, I'm just going to add a tiny bit of white from the previous mix. I'm just going to go across with my flat brush, and I'm just going to create some waves here in the foreground that look a bit harsher, going across. There we go. Just tie this area a bit more into the shade, make it a little bit grayer, and the same just going up, because this area would be getting hardly any sunlight, so I'm just going to make it a bit harsher and darker. There we go. So it looks a little bit cooler, doesn't it? So we've got this warm area here on our sand. So why don't we actually make some shimmering wet sand while we're figuring out what to do? So let's get some white. Let's get our brush that's nice and clean. And let's get some of that medium yellow and a little bit of orange. So white, some yellow and some orange. Plenty of white, make it nice and pastel. And then if we load up our flat brush again, that we use for the waves, as I was saying about painting straight lines, it's really, really good to do wet sand. So look, all I'm doing, I'm going across, once I move my hand out of the way, and I'm trying to make it look like this is all the wet sand that's shimmering in the sunlight when the wave peels back. And what it does is it leaves this lovely glittering sand on the beach. So by just using a flat brush, again, it's so easy look to go across and to have nice straight lines that sort of drag out. See how that works? So look, I'm just going to come out, go straight across, just drag back and forth. So again, nearer the sun, it's going to be more yellowy orange. And as we move down here, we're going to get cooler because we're more in the shade. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just going across with my brush, trying to make it look like it's sort of shimmering. So there we go. And then as we come down, we're going to use a darker shade. So we're going to get to about here in the middle. So again, the same principle. If you go over the colour twice, if it dries a bit flat, because obviously it's picking up that darker sand colour, it's going to look a little bit sort of mucky. So if your colour is a bit flat, you can always dry it and we can go over it in a minute. But as we move down, we're going to get a little bit darker. So we're going to use some of this Scarlet Red and orange and some yellow. So a nice bright red, an orange and some yellow. And we're going to tiny bit of Cobalt Blue, just a smidge, just to suck a little bit of the colour out. So again, using the same principle, this area is going to be a little bit more in shade. So we've got the really bright colours off by the sun and the darker colours here in the distance. And we're just letting that colour look just fade out, just so it looks like it's getting dark in the shade. We're just blending it into the yellow. And then let's just get some yellow and white. And while that area is drying, this area should be a little bit more drier. We can just go over the top, look, just make it a lot more vibrant. So let's have a little bit more orange, just a bit too yellowy. So just mixing the two areas together. Let's bridge them together. So again, we're just trying to mirror the colour of the sky into the wet sand. But I want it more yellow nearer the sun and more orange and cooler as we get further away. And then try again to have the transitions nice and smooth, just so it looks gradual. Look at that. There we go. So just going back between the two colours. Now if you hang tight, I'm just going to get some yellow and orange and just lighten this area up here, just so it's nice and soft here. There we go. There we go, perfect. So all I'm going to do is just go back on our outline. So if you correct areas like we have, we've just done that nice shimmering sand, don't forget to just put things back. If you've painted over areas, look, our harsh outline is gone, because obviously we've just done that nice shimmer in our sand. So don't be afraid to just put it back. So anything you change, as I say, we can just fix. We can just paint over it. So let's just put some details in here while it's drying. And then I think this outline here has just gone a bit rubbish, so let's just fix that. I still think this black, as we move up here, is just a bit too harsh. So I think we'll change it as we go along. But we'll put it in for now and have a think. I think it's bringing it a bit too close. So why don't we use it for now? And as I say, we can soften it up in a minute. So I'm just outlining now. Just clean my brush. Let's just do a really soft one just up here in the distance. Just really fine. And then once this area is done, just here, I think I'm just going to darken it up just here on the left, just to make it look a bit harsher. Just a bit more in the shade. Just a bit bigger and chunkier, so it looks like that wave's a bit more powerful. So just outlining there. And then I think I'm going to do the same with the far off wave, so I'm just going to get some of that Vermilion and some Cobalt Blue. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of orange, just heat her up so it's still nice and warm. It's almost like a crimsony colour. And I'm just going to make this far off wave just a little bit harsher. I think it's just dried a bit flat. So just, again, just going over the top, just make it more vibrant. Just bring it a bit closer to the viewer. So let's say you can push anything back by making it softer, and if you want to make it harsher and darker, it will bring it forward. So if you want your waves to be big and crashing, just make it a darker colour. I'm just going to link this area here, just put a few little waves in the far left just to bridge this area, so that looks a bit nicer. And then I'm just going to take some of the outer colour that we used earlier, and before I link the area, I'm just going to give it a nice coat of paint again. As I say, I think this area is just a little bit too harsh, so I'm just going to go over the top. The problem with a sunset is you have these really warm colours around the sun, but then you have these really cool colours for things like the seafoam, the waves, and the outer bit of the wave. So when you're trying to paint that, you're trying to get them to merge, but also you're trying not to get them to turn green, because obviously, as I said, with the sky, if you combine yellow and light blue, you're going to get green. So a good tip is to wait for areas to dry and then just go over the top of them. And then you still get this vibrancy of colour, and they still look very blue, and you won't get a horrible green. So all I'm doing, I'm just shading a little bit of this area just to make it look like it's merging into each other. And then I think just here I'm going to colour this area in where we've got a bit of that orange on the seafoam to add a little bit of sunlight. I think it just looks a bit cartoony, so I'm just gonna colour it in. So I was debating, so I was just coming down here, but I think let's just fill it in and just have a little bit of it coming through. Yeah, that looks a bit more pleasant. Looks prettier. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to dry her. So we've got this nice and dry picture, and all I'm going to do now she's dry, I'm just going to swap back to my flat brush, and as I say, because the painting is dry, I can't mix the yellow and orange and white that I've got here with that light blue because it's all dry. So now if I go over the top of this dry canvas, so I'm just getting plenty of paint on my brush, and I just gently merge it, so just like we did to push the area back, I'm just going over the top, and I'm just trying to glaze it just so it looks like that sunlight is merging that area of the horizon and the ocean together. So see how that does it? And I'm just coming down and I'm just gradually easing up on the brush, and there's not so much a big jump between the light blue at the bottom here and the nice warm yellows and oranges of the sunset. So that looks more realistic, that looks better. Now please don't do this part. I was testing something, but I don't want you to do this at home because it doesn't look very good. I was going to have a shimmer of the sun here on the wet sand, And I was just using some titanium white coming down, but please don't do it, because as I say with experimentation, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it looks a little bit wonky, and I think it takes it away from our nice edge. So we'll paint over that in a minute. So if you want to, you can try it, but I'm going to paint over it in a minute. I don't really like it. So I'm just going to get some raw umber brown and some orange and a little bit of purple. And as I said, this area here where it's black, I'm just going to warm it up with some orange and purple and some raw umber brown. So I'm just going over the top with a lighter colour, and we'll try that out, just take away a bit of the harshness out of it. As I say, if you find that even that is a bit too harsh, you can even get some pastel orange, yellow and orange and go over the top like I've just doing. So I've just made it even softer because I'm trying to push it back. So by using orange, yellow and white, look, I've got rid of that horrible shimmer in the sun that I didn't like. But also just that line there, I've just covered it in a little bit of orange. So the black outline is not as harsh. So look, you can just go over the top. Just make them look softer. And push them back. So that's why I keep saying acrylics are so perfect for beginners and intermediate painters, because look, you can just paint over areas. Unlike oils where it's all mixed together and you'd have to wait for ages, we can just go over the top and make them really nice and soft. And then just to finish her off, we're just going to get some pure black, some lamp black and a little bit of purple. So black and purple to make a really, really dark grey. We're just going to put in our shadow here just a little bit thicker. Let's just make it a little bit thicker and nice. Just to bring that wave really close to us. So here in the corner. Now, because we've got the wave here in the corner, we're not going to be able to sign it. Normally you sign your painting in the left-hand corner. But what we're going to do, we're going to make this area nice and dark. So we're going to frame this corner and we're going to sign it in this corner. So we need a dark colour for our signatures to stand out against. And also, as I was saying earlier, we want to darken our corners to get you to look towards the middle. So we're going to get some of this black and some purple. And I'm just going to colour in this corner. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to swap over to my flat brush, because that's too harsh trying to do it with a small brush. And I'm just going to blend it, and I'm just going to darken up this corner here, just so it's nice and dark. So then when I sign in white, I've got a nice corner. And again, I'm just going to go up to that shimmer in the sand, and I'm just going to darken up the very bottom of the painting, just to frame her. So again, and now she's finished. So I've signed her in the bottom right for once, because we've got this lovely dark corner. So you've learned how to paint a sunset over the ocean. You've learned how to do transitions in your sky, so we don't get a green sky and we get this lovely realistic sunset. You've got lovely transitions in your clouds from warm to cool as it gets further away from the sun. You've got this underpainting in the water, so then when you put your waves on top, we've learned how to use a flat brush and painting tape to make nice straight waves, and use darker colours to bring them towards you, and then use cool colours such as white and blues and purples, and we've got shimmering sand to create all this realism. So a really nice and easy tutorial. As I say, my name is Murray. Thank you so much to Feliks for letting me be a guest teacher here on your channel. Please obviously go and check out his paints, because they are fantastic as we use them in the tutorial. You can find me over here on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook at mstuartpaintings, and take care and see you soon. Thank you very much. See you later, guys. Happy painting.